Hi, this is Jocelyn Stewart, also known as MessyMilitaryLawyer on TikTok. You are listening to Awakened Nation with Brad Zollis.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zollis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Jocelyn, how you doing?
I'm great, Brad. How are you today?
Good, good. Hey, I have to give a big shout out to our mutual friend, Rob Anspach, Mr. Sarcasm himself, got us together. And you're the kind of guest I love having on Awakened Nation because our listeners are just going to love your story. And we're going to talk about TikTok later on, but welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And yes, definitely kudos to Rob for a lot. He keeps me going.
You know, it's funny. I met Rob later in life, but we grew up in the same town, the same area. That's the funniest part. Yeah, I'm from Pennsylvania. Yeah, Pennsylvania boy, right here, born and bred. So we're gonna dig in. Let me read your bio real quick. We have Jocelyn Stewart on the show today. In 2005, Jocelyn began work as a new military prosecutor, where she remained in litigation for 26 months. In 2007, she transitioned into military defense work until 2010. In 2010, Jocelyn was selected to serve as one of the original 15 U.S. Army Special Victim prosecutors. In this position, she litigated cases with charges of sexual assault, child molestation, child exploitation, and intimate partner violence. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That's a rough thing to do. Am I right?
Absolutely. It takes its
tough.
toll for sure.
Yeah, it does. In 2012, she left active duty to pursue private practice in military courts martial defense. Jocelyn founded her own law firm and is the CEO of the law office of Jocelyn C. Stewart Corp. As of 2022, the firm consists of 3 full-time attorneys, 5 part-time attorneys, 1 appellate counsel, 2 paralegals, and a dedicated defense investigator. Members of the firm have represented clients of every military service and have defended clients in the U.S., Iraq, Afghanistan, Germany, Italy, Japan, and South Korea. From January 2017 until January 2020, Jocelyn also served as adjunct professor of criminal law at the Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School in Charlottesville, Virginia. She has published 3 books in her Shaping the Battlefield series that consists of practice points in courts martial litigation. Please welcome to the show, Jocelyn Stewart, also TikTok star.
Yeah, we'll see.
So let me ask you a question. This is not something most people gravitate towards, and that is being a lawyer, in the military. What made you want to do that? Because some people have a head for that, and a lot of us don't.
Sure. Well, my passion for service came later in life. When I was about 15 years old, a young woman from my hometown of Lafayette, Louisiana, came to my school and spoke to us about her experience at United States Military Academy of West Point. It's the first time I'd ever heard of West Point.
Wow.
And I kind of declared there today to all of, that day she came to all of my peers that that's what I was going to do. Of course, they looked at me like I was crazy, but for me, it felt like the meshing of all of my passions for physical discipline, intellectual discipline, and being able to go and have an education that would mean I could combine all of those things along with my dedication to duty. Just felt like the perfect fit. But my love of the law actually began when I was 5. I knew then that I wanted to be it. I know.
Wait. I loved the law at 5. Like at Halloween, did you dress up as a lawyer?
Well, no, honestly, my first declaration at 5 was that I was going to be a judge.
Nice.
I did not believe my dad when he told me that in order to become a judge, I had to first be a lawyer. So he had to, of course, provide me with some evidence of that. And I said, okay, fine. I'll be a lawyer first. But that began at 5.
So, did your dad test you like, Jocelyn, your toothbrush is dry, and you just told me that you brushed your teeth, and you said, and then you answer at 5, Dad, I did brush my teeth, but I did not say when or where. Yes,
I
that's
think
a
I
true.
was right. I mean, I think I definitely was a challenging child, but I was also the child who, for Santa, put out a document that said, if you are really Santa, I need you to sign here. And then I collected some handwriting samples from various members of my family. So I was that kid for sure.
Wow. I'm impressed. The only other person that we had on the show before that has this early nerd vibe, really digging into the law and things is Kelly Alexander, and she's obsessed with the tax code. So you two should meet. I want to switch gears right now because you were in a position, as it says in your bio, litigating cases with sexual assault, child molestation, child exploitation, and partner violence. I want to talk about this. This is a heavy subject. And a lot of times I feel in America and probably the rest of the world, this subject reaches a certain point and then nobody seems to want to go any deeper. And I imagine it was really heavy, a heavy toll on you. Do you want to, I know you can't share any cases, but what was the process that you went through? And how come some of these things are they're just pushed off to the side? We want to keep it quiet kind of thing.
Right. So, I mean, essentially, I was thrust into it just because of circumstance. When I started off prosecuting, before I even got to the level of the special victim prosecutors, the way that the military ran its trials, you essentially got the trials from whatever organic unit you were advising the commander for. It just so happened that my first 4 cases were child molestation cases. I was young. I didn't have kids yet. I wanted to make sure that I was doing the work the right way. Mm-hmm. And so I grew my own personal library and just researched it. I also reached out across Germany to someone who was a recognized expert in child forensic interview techniques, because I saw an application for me in conducting my direct examinations and just forming the basis of the trust that it takes to develop with a kid in order to have them disclose, and specifically to be able to be brave enough to disclose in court. And so I drove across Germany, and he gave me sort of this 4-hour crash course lesson and gave me another list of books and resources to grow my own personal library. And that's really where it started.
That's incredible. I mean, because this is not a subject where you might think, hey, there's a library of information, but you did it. You went and found the expert in the field for this. So did it ever take a toll on you emotionally? I mean, I'm sure it did, but I just want to hear it from your mouth.
No, it absolutely did, especially because as I progressed, when I took over as the special victim prosecutor for the Midwest, I actually inherited a cold case. And they had almost given up hope. They were about to separate him with a bad discharge, but he had never been tried criminally for his crimes. And I picked up the file and was able to develop the trust with the family, and we took it to court. It was actually the first non-homicide life without parole sentence that was ever obtained in the Army.
Wow.
He was sentenced to life without parole. And that was it was very unique experience, to say the least. The chatter that came out of it was, Jocelyn didn't even ask for life. And well, sort of, right? I find that when you are advocating, whether it's as the defense or as the prosecution, and a lesson I certainly have taken to heart that was concretized for me at the Trial Lawyers College from Jerry Spence, was this idea that if we try to tell whoever it is that we're advocating to how to feel, they're going to resent it and they're going to resist us. Mm-hmm. But if you can warm them to it, and if they come along their own individualized path and they come to feel a certain way, they're going to be much more apt to feeling in that way. And that was how I approached appropriate punishment in that case when it came time to argue sentencing. That's
a brilliant strategy, I have to say. What was his reaction, this molester? I mean, during the trial, was he did he have this attitude like, flippant, and then he was prosecuted? What were his reactions through all of this?
He demonstrated a lot of what you're suggesting, a lot of flippancy and a lot of narcissism. He
Right.
kept attempting during breaks to address me personally, thinking that if he did, perhaps it would cause me to pull a punch. It was really staggering, and I just kept having to redirect him to his counsel and explain to his counsel, who obviously knew it was inappropriate, but that it was not going to impact me, and so he needed to shift gears. He actually took the stand.
Wow.
And testified in his own defense. And I remember sitting there at the counsel table and just this sickness to my stomach, because if you divested yourself from any of the outside evidence of anything else, he sounded really convincing, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps he'd even convinced himself. And so I remember just being this very heavy feeling that when I stood up to cross-examine him, that I had to do this the right way, or because intellectually speaking, I think that when we look at these types of cases, no one wants to believe that there can be evil in the world, right? Someone who would harm children in this way. And so it's much more palatable for a person to say, oh, it must have been a false case. It must be, that the mom has coached them, fill in the blank.
Right.
I actually ended up developing a class on how to cross-examine, as a prosecutor, how to cross-examine military accused people based off of this particular cross. Now, when I left active duty, I took it with me. I deleted it off all the shared drives.
Right.
It wasn't my job to train the prosecutors who were going to come after me, for sure.
Right. Now, no, I don't. You can say no to getting into the details of the case, but was this his own child, or was this?
So one was a biological child that was his, and the other was a stepchild. So there were two victims in this case.
This is horrifying to think this happens, and you just nailed it. A lot of people, they don't believe there's evil in the world. We like to live in our own bubbles. We all do. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. We want the white picket fence. We want the beautiful house. We want the, the leave it to beaver kind of mom and dad ideology. But I lived in New York City for 35 years, and I learned to hone myself to see things. And you're right. Some things just do not come across our radar because we haven't been taught what to look for. And the signs were there, I'm sure, to bring this guy, up on these charges. I mean, it had to be pretty bad to be brought up that way. But I don't understand why, let's say, the mom was in so much denial. Do you know why that is?
So I think he was very good at masking this, right? In this particular case, he had taken very intentional steps to put a lot of fear into the girls from not disclosing. And when it can be very confusing to children who are being abused by their trusted adult, right? It's not a stranger. It's not, the guy at the park who's creepy. I mean, you're talking about a parent.
Yes.
And so like many of the cases that I had where it is a trusted adult, there end up being disclosures at school or to children. Especially, I had several cases that came to light after, protocols were being taught in school about sort of good touch, bad touch, that caused some kids to sort of have an awareness about it. But in terms of the intimate partners of these folks not appreciating that it's going on, I think we underestimate the deliberation of the action on the part of the offender. Yeah, for sure.
They're really good at hiding this. They really are. And I think Oprah had a special on this, and she talked about her own trauma with child molestation. And it's a confusing thing for the victim because it is a trusted adult. And it's also, and she went into this zone where I didn't even think about it. It's like, it's also a pleasure center. And at first you're like confused, and then it becomes invasive. 2:00 in the morning, 4 in the morning. It's unwanted, period. And it becomes secretive. This is between us, your daddy's little girl, all this stuff that comes up that is really there to program the child not to step forward. And it's horrific.
And I'm familiar. Absolutely.
It's horrific that they even do this. Now, let's go down this road too. I've done some of the research. All child molesters usually have been molested themselves.
I've actually read some studies that test that theory.
Really? Oh, I want to hear this. Good. Yeah, let me know.
Right, because I think because there is sort of this need to explain it away as well.
Right.
It's been developed in them, it's been cultivated in them. My work in this field has generated a lot of data that that is an excuse that's given, although it's not always the truth. I represented plenty of people for whom that was their truth.
Right.
They had their own experiences and their own trauma. I also had plenty of folks that I was assigned or detailed to represent while serving as a defense counsel in the military, and that for whom that was not their experience, or at least it was not something that they were willing to disclose. So I think the data out there is still very all across the board. But because of how, kind of getting back to your point a few minutes ago, just in terms of how hard these cases are, when I got effective duty and I started my private practice, because of the very, very, very serious level of child cases in particular that I had handled, I set a boundary and said for a while, I just said, I'm not taking these cases as a defense attorney.
Right.
And I held to that for a little while until someone in particular contacted me. And honestly, he's a lifelong friend now. He was insistent that he was being falsely accused, which for anyone's mind, that type of, allegation, in his words, I'd rather be accused of murder.
Right.
And he was very insistent. I said, look, I'm not taking these cases. Please just please look at my case. Please consider it. And so after a lot of insistence, I went down to the base defense office and I said, okay, we're going to watch the forensic interview of the child. This for me is going to tell me if I'm going to take your case or not. And he keeps saying, oh, I'm innocent. And I very curtly said, that's what they all say. Mm-hmm. And after I watched the interview, I knew with 100% certainty he was innocent. And I took his case, and it was a 2-week-long trial, and he was fully acquitted of everything.
Well, thank God for that. We are in a day and age where people take zero responsibility for accusing someone else of something, because lawyers actually recommend this during divorce, gather, what do they call it? Trials or, proceedings. In divorce proceedings, they actually recommend accuse the husband of this and you'll get bigger settlements. And this is a little scary practice sometimes. Do you see that at all in some of your work?
In a great deal of the work that we have, we'll see intimate partners accuse all of a sudden after they say, after everything's fine, they're going down the divorce path, things haven't worked out. And now they have either not gotten the amount of money they thought they would, the cut they thought they would. And now all of a sudden they make allegations that 5 years ago, they had been sexually assaulted by their spouse. Or they shift blame and say, oh, the kids are making disclosures to me. I think he did something terrible to them. So yes, we see it very often, too often, in the context of divorce and separation cases.
You never get your reputation back after that. Doesn't matter who you are. You never get your reputation back after being accused. It doesn't matter if it was false or it is. You never get it back. That's the rough part, because always in the back of someone's mind is that thought, oh, maybe he did. And so I take my hat off for you for defending that guy and getting him off, because being accused of something that you didn't do is probably the worst thing you can ever have in your life.
No, and we remind people all the time that is a trauma. Being falsely accused is itself a trauma. Our clients go through confusion at not being able to process information as quickly. Their minds are not operating in the same way, and it's because they are operating in a true trauma. I had a client who I was so close to, and our clients really do become family. And this gentleman in particular was accused of a very heinous, forcible rape by strangulation.
Wow!
And we dug into the case. It was completely false. He was fully exonerated by the not guilty, but as you say, there's those lingering whispers, right? And he continued in his service until about a year later, he took his own life.
Yeah. because once you're accused, and I don't think that this is talked about enough in our society, you better be accurate if you're going to accuse somebody of something, because you will be destroying a life. Even if they are exonerated, you have destroyed a life.
Right. And one of the things that we see that's so frustrating in the current climate is that there is not that discernment. There is not truly a method where people are questioning or investigating the actual allegation. Everything is being accepted as true. Everything is being pushed forward because of an agenda and because of a perception. It's incredibly destructive, and it's destroying people's lives.
Well, it's interesting, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, I believe it's somewhere along the lines of all the litigation in the world that takes place, somebody suing somebody else, whatever, 94% of it happens in the United States, simply because of our law system allows somebody to accuse somebody else without responsibility. In other countries, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, please do, you cannot accuse somebody of something unless you're willing to pay for their legal fees at the same time. And it's a certain amount of money. I think it's like 25 grand or something. The last time I researched it, laws change, but you're not allowed to accuse somebody of something in another country unless you're willing to pay their legal fees at the same time. And that's taken care of. So this is why litigation is so low in other countries as opposed to the United States.
No, I hadn't heard that, but that's very interesting. I know one of the things that we have become frustrated by is that in certain jurisdictions, Washington included, where I do the majority of my practice, is that if someone makes a false allegation against you that defames you, that causes you, significant emotional damages, significant financial damages, if they made their statements to law enforcement, they then receive sovereign immunity from being sued for defamation.
That's interesting. Yeah,
but if they made it to someone else, that's just as damaging, because the public policy is that we don't want to discourage people from filing complaints.
Right.
Great. So now you've insulated them from their false claims. Congratulations.
It's interesting how the law is. I want to ask you, can you reveal a couple of the strategies and things that you've found to let people know that maybe the child is telling the truth about this particular uncle, whatever, because it's usually somebody very close to them that is molesting them? Are there any signs we should be looking for?
So, it's hard in this arena because everything that could be a sign could also be a sign of something else, right?
Yes.
But certainly red flags that you would at least want to look into further would be what we call secondary incontinence, which means the child has already, become toilet trained, but then later in life is now bedwetting and is now demonstrating an inability to do that. That's at least a sign of something very significant going on in that child's life, something that's very troubling to them, whether it's molestation or whether it's something else. It's, it should be very looked at very closely.
Yeah. I watch closely sometimes, I used to take the martial arts, and I watched my nephew was one of the, he was one of the senseis. And I watched how certain kids were with their parents and with others. And you can always tell when a kid has a really great, emotionally balanced life where, they have the discipline because their favorite adult, they will run up and hug them. And that to me sometimes is a really good sign. And when somebody shows up at the family reunion and insists that this kid give them a hug, and the kid wants to get the hell away from that adult, that can be two things. It can be, hey, I want to play, I don't want to be hugged. Or that's a sign that adult is a little creepy in private. Like you said, it could be either or. It could be,
or it could be a number of other things, right?
Yeah.
They heard something that their mom said about Uncle Billy that caused them to feel, there's honestly, kids are complex creatures just like we all are. Yeah. I think though, another telltale sign that we see in a lot of child molestation cases in particular are when the child starts to display an interest or a very relaxed behavior around something that's erotic that would be inappropriate for their age. They'll masturbate publicly. They'll, because they are being groomed that these are okay behaviors, but perhaps their groomer hasn't curtailed it enough and set a boundary. And so you'll see some of these behaviors kind of bleeding over into, I'm sitting here watching cartoons and, whoa, little Sally is pleasuring herself. So
wow,
you never know, right? But that's one of the things.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That to me, that's astounding. I almost don't have any words for that. So let's shift gears. There's the narcissist side of this too, because the person doing the molestation and they're grooming the child and they're doing all this. I've had in my life over the last 4 years, narcissists, and they hid themselves super well. And one turned out to be a con man, and another, just was a little, sorry, I'm not using the technical term, but a little out there mentally. So they have learned to walk amongst us like normal folks. Have you found any way to see that behavior?
Covert narcissism is something that it's definitely there. I find that until you really have an opportunity, I wasn't able to really expose that side of this individual until I had him on the stand, right? And then I was able to tease that out. One of the ways that I did was I knew that by the way that he was doing his denials, they were very rehearsed, sort of the rule of threes, deny in threes, and that's it. So when I stood up to cross-examine him, I said, okay, well, it sounds like you're saying this is all made up. Is that fair? Yes. Okay. Help me understand why we're here. And so he demonstrated his narcissism by telling me all the reasons. He had all the answers. It's because one answer is because I took away all the Christmas presents. They all got in trouble. Okay, that's a good one. Let me write that down. What's another one? Their mom is coaching them. Okay, excellent. Let me take that down. And so he came through with a couple of them. One of the tests that I have whenever I'm talking to a potential client who's telling me I didn't do this, I will coax them in the same way. And I will say, do you have a sense of why you're being accused? When they start rattling off either nonsense or maybe, very, just when they start rattling off explanations,
right?
To me, it sends a red flag. If the person responds and says, I have been asking myself that every day, I cannot wrap my mind around how I'm here, that usually indicates to me actual innocence. And so they will demonstrate it by trying to give all the answers versus just sort of being lost in this idea that they could ever be accused.
So if they always have answers for everything you question them on, and the answers are perfect, and it makes sense, or maybe not, unless you push a little harder, that's probably a good sign. You just
at least enough for me for some awareness. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you've given me food for thought, because these people I was working with through the years, I now understand how I could have caught it sooner.
Maybe. I mean, they're very good.
They are really good.
Covert narcissism. It's a thing. It's real.
Yeah, because there's narcissism where the person has this huge ego, and then there's this narcissism where this one person, he was always the victim, and everybody's picking on me, and look what's happening to me, and I have PTSD from the military, and everybody leaned in, and especially people who had compassion. And it was funny. Once he was found out and the people who really hated him cut him off, the ones that had all this compassion and believed his story, you couldn't convince them. It was astounding to me. And part of the reason was he painted this picture online. He always had people taking pictures of him helping the homeless. So nobody could ever believe that this guy is a con man taking money from women all over the place, pretending to be this big business person. And meanwhile, he's broke. And he's convinced all these people. So thank you. I hope our listeners can get a chunk out of this. I've been wanting to do this, but it's like you're like a real Law and Order Special Victims Unit attorney. Am I correct?
I definitely was when I was prosecuting, and now I use those skills to help people, especially to uncover the false allegations. And it continues to be enormously stressful.
Well, God bless you for what you're doing. How do we get in touch with you? What website do we go to? Who should people, look up? Jocelyn Stewart, but what's your website?
Sure. It's www.ucmj-defender.com.
Good. I'll put that in the show notes. Let's switch gears. You've written several books. How was that process? Because I know, you said this in the green room before we started. You basically said only lawyers would be interested in this kind of stuff. But there are a lot of lawyers out there who, I have a few who listen to my show, both in the United States and internationally. We are listened to in like 75 countries. So, what are those books? I mean, I love the fact that you took your passion and your love for this and your experience and put them into this book series.
Sure. And I still have many more yet to write. But the inspiration really for the first one was born of recognition, frustration, and then a desire to improve. Because I am a firm believer that if I identify that there's a deficiency somewhere, unless I'm part of the approval, unless I'm part of making it better, I don't really have the right to just sit back and critique. Right. So I have noticed, having done this for almost 2 decades, that there is a true deficiency in military attorneys' ability to advocate in written form, right? We go to court all the time. We are petitioning the court, asking the court to do things in the form of motions. And motions practice has been an abomination. Right. But then I went back to my own experience. I went back through the desk books at the JAG school, and I realized there's no training that's given that's meaningful about how to do it. And I said, okay, well, I really enjoy motions practice. I have enjoyed quite a bit of success in it. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to break down my process of how it is that I go about doing this so that maybe I can help others. And so the first book was how to draft motions in military practice. And it's all part of the Shaping the Battlefield series, because all of the trial skills that we have to hone. And so I'm drafting a book for kind of each of those skills, followed up closely in second by how to actually litigate them. Because it's one thing to write them, it's one thing to petition the court, but you have to go into court and you have to put on evidence, you have to make an oral argument, you have to satisfy the judge's questions. And again, I looked around, there was no training in this area. In fact, when I went back to see the last time this had been written about, I think I found a 1962 journal article and there were only a couple of paragraphs. So I felt like there was definitely a need. It was something that I love to do. It's something I'm passionate about in military practice. And I just want to make sure that others are getting those resources.
That's fantastic. Thank you for the work you do, because we can only get better if we have better people and better resources like you have put out there into the world. Now, I'm going to put this out here. A lot of people may not know this, but military law is different than, our constitutional law and things like this. How did you make the adjustment from, being in the military and now coming into, your own personal private practice?
Right. So I largely have only practiced military law. I mean, that's what I was taught coming, I had obviously law school experience, but almost immediately after that, I had a 4-month stint at the JAG school where I learned military law and military practice, and then did that for almost 9 years on active duty. But it was definitely an interesting transition from having been fed my cases, right? Being assigned cases, here's your next case file, to now you're in the world, feast or famine, right? How are you going to survive as a business person? It's definitely an interesting transition.
What's this thing called marketing? I have to put my face on everything. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that sometimes. But it's definitely marketing in the 21st century. But that leads me to my next point. And you are becoming a TikTok star. Is that correct? Rob told me all about this. Tell our listeners what happened, because you got a lot of followers on TikTok, like super fast. How did that happen? What came about with all this?
Well, so first, being a dutiful lawyer, I'm going to challenge the word star. I don't know that I'm star power yet. We'll see what happens. But I challenged myself to do it. Rob actually for several years has been in my ear about doing content on video that is less polished, right? More real.
Yes.
And so, because I have marketed with companies and produced some very beautiful videos that capture, who I am and my passion, but really just in terms of connecting with people. And so I started off kind of in this direction of making more and more YouTube videos that are just me sitting at my desk answering questions or, talking off the cuff about legal topics.
Right.
That kind of led me down this path of, and I've heard so much from people about TikTok as a platform. I've got 2 teenage boys who seem addicted to scrolling through, TikToks, which is its own, its own concern there. But I challenged myself to do at least 3 videos a day for 30 days and see what it was. And so I experimented with content. I experimented with the topics and found an interesting constellation of people who seem to really be interested. I think, there's so much true crime drama that people find interesting. Right. People also want to be, informed about their rights. And so really after, and I've heard this, that if you post one particular video and you may not even know which one it's going to be, if that one quote goes viral, then things kind of escalate. And I think that's what just happened. Actually, just a couple of days ago, I posted one particular video and it's really taken off.
Yeah, that's the mystery that is driving everybody crazy. The ad agencies, the PR firms, everybody. You don't know what's going to be the next big thing. And that's always been a problem with marketing. You see it in Hollywood. They just keep taking an old brand that was super popular when I was a kid and reconstitute it and then wonder why it failed. Speed Racer, the movie came out here in the United States and it bombed because, you have about 150 million people or 100 million people who don't know who Speed Racer is. But my generation does know Speed Racer. So they didn't prime the pump. They didn't do anything. So they never do that analysis that, hey, what made this brand so effective back then? What do we do now to bring it up, prime that pump, get people excited, salivating one more time, and then put it out there? And all this new digital, frontier that we're in right now, you can't predict this. Right. You just have to do.
I think the best advice that I received in it was to not be marketing, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so I haven't been. It's the non-marketing marketing, which is just to show a glimpse of people, right? And so one of the things in evaluating, what are the core values that I have in my firm? What are the core values that I approach in my teamwork and also in my work with clients is to really try to shed this idea that I've got to be perfect, right? You read a very impressive bio, and I have largely built a reputation for people who question whether I sleep or not, right? Because of all of the projects that I'm doing. I've got 4 kids. I'm running this business. I'm doing all of these things. How is it that, how do I have it all? The answer is I don't, right? And so that really inspired the TikTok as an extension of that, because I'm calling myself Messy Military Lawyer, right? Life is messy. And just kind of some of the interest has been in more of the day-to-day, right? And then I'm doing what I call like a war stories. I am taking, of course, no names, no identifying information, but I'm talking about the trial wins that I've had and sort of analyzing them and putting them into these different parts. And people are really responding to it. People are enjoying it. Now, of course, there's the few out there who say I talk slow and I need to get to my point faster. So it also has been interesting in that regard, because I challenge those folks. I say, it's always the people who are kind of rude on here who actually aren't producing their own content. Isn't that interesting? And I hearken them back to Theodore Roosevelt's Man in the Arena speech. That usually quiets them down a little bit, but
it does. I remember the first critique I had when my first book came out, and it was just like, this guy thinks he's hot stuff, basically, and then they were like, you wrote a book about technology. There's nothing about technology in there, so they didn't read the book, and they went on and they just attacked me, and I felt bad. And then I looked, and they had almost 500 reviews, and I thought to myself, this is a critique, a person who does nothing but critique. With all those 460 some odd reviews, they were making fun of me about my own imposed self-worth in my mind. And I'm thinking, this person could have written a book with the over 465 critiques they had given, good and bad, of other people's work. And, I just, all I saw then was, jealousy. And usually, to me, jealousy, when they see somebody doing it, what it is your own untapped potential that you see in someone else. That's all jealousy is. You're seeing something in someone else that you either want to do or could do, or you're repressed in it. And so sometimes at some point you have to go, I don't care what other people's opinions are. I'm just having fun doing this.
Well, and I've actually been overwhelmed by helpful, constructive critique from other people. And it's all about how they approach it, right? Hey, you may want to consider doing longer videos with fewer parts. And I'm always, thank you so much. I'm new on here. I really appreciate that feedback. So I've had much more of that than I have sort of the, troll of you stink and go away. One comment I got in the last couple of days was, no offense. I'm like, it's always going to be great when they start off with no offense. Yeah. They said, your content is so negative. And yes, I can't disagree, because I'm sitting here talking about the ways that people's lives have been, upended by false allegations and the trauma they go. It's heavy stuff. Scroll for kittens. I do. In my life, I scroll for kittens. I scroll for puppies. I also need levity. But you're right. My stuff is pretty heavy. So,
Jocelyn,
thank you.
You need to wear clown makeup and a balloon. Make it more positive. Yeah, it's funny what people say. I don't even know where to begin. I'm on TikTok, Awakened Nation, and my girlfriend keeps telling me, she goes, you should just do impersonations and mess around, because I used to get paid to imitate people like Christopher Walken and stuff, so I might just do that. Wow. So anyways, what is your handle on TikTok, real quick? What is it? It's MessyMilitaryLawyer. MessyMilitaryLawyer. I love it. That is so you. And when we see you, you don't look messy. You look very kept, up to date.
Oh, that's today. I put
that's the illusion. That's the illusion, right? It's like when you have 4 kids, folks, if you don't have kids yet, or you just have one, or you have fur babies, okay? Let me tell you, when you have 4 kids, and what ages are they?
They are 9 to 14. Okay,
so you got a teen, and then you got all the way down to, and they're all at different levels of, preteen, tween, still in elementary school. One can dress themselves and get ready and out the door, and the other's kind of halfway there. That's interesting. God bless moms. That's all I have to say, because it's a huge hustle. It really is.
I'm a mom taxi most days.
Oh, so yeah. And
you gotta go.
Well, we went from my dad's generation, who bought a station wagon, didn't care how sexy or not unsexy it was. And then I think the next generation that came along and said, I'm not buying a station wagon. I'm going to buy an SUV instead. So the SUV replaced the station wagon. It had to. Something had to. So thank you so much for being on Awakened Nation. Real quick, I do a lightning round at the end where I ask my guests things that basically, to get to know you better.
Sure.
So are you ready?
I am.
We're gonna dig in here. What excites you?
Trash TV.
Like what? I'm
a member of Bachelor Nation. So any, Bachelor in paradise, especially, is going on right now. Things are getting super spicy, because that gets me out of my head and out of having to solve people's problems. So I'm pretty excited about
my girlfriend is she's from Vietnam. She's American, but she was born in Vietnam. So I come home one day and she's watching all these Asian bachelorette dating shows. So I get it. I'm sort of like, what are you watching? And we just laugh. And then we have one show that's coming out of Japan that's really good. It's about an attorney who has, I think, Asperger's. Attorney Wu, I think it is, or something. I'll find out, but it's actually good. She has all these quirks and everything, and solves cases because she sees things differently. So you might like that one. I'll give you some more to watch. It has subtitles, so it's really good. So my next question is, do you have a favorite memory?
A favorite memory?
Mm-hmm.
I think I do. Yeah, I think I do.
What is it?
It would have to be gardening with my grandmother.
Wow. What was that like?
She had a special affinity for black-eyed Susans.
No.
And I just remember being on hands and knees in the backyard of her Pittsburgh home. So we have a Pennsylvania connection there.
Yeah, I went to college in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Yeah. And just the soil in our hands, the smell of the dirt, and just being there with her. I miss her every day, but when I see black-eyed Susans, I'm transported back.
I lived in Shadyside on Negley Avenue for about 3-4 years, right outside.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Very close. Very close.
When you talk about your grandmother, I'm reminded of a guest of ours that was on, I think it was season 2 or 3, Panache Desai. He's a New York Times bestseller. And I asked him the same question, and he said, my grandmother teaching me how to meditate in India, and the incense and the foods and everything. And he started crying. And I was just like, wow. He goes, I think about her every day, and it is amazing. Like, I miss my grandfather. He was a big band drummer back in the 30s and 40s. He was playing drums, big orchestra. And one of his trombone players actually went to Hollywood to dub the trombone parts for Jimmy Stewart and Glenn Miller's story. And I didn't know about that till later in life. You have these bonds with your family. My grandmother used to babysit me, and she got me into Star Trek because she watched Star Trek. So God bless you. Grandma had a huge influence on you. Definitely. And my last question, is there any place in the world that you would really, really want to visit, and why?
So a place I've been or not been? Either
or, doesn't matter. Besides Germany.
So, yeah, exactly.
No,
honestly, first thing that popped into my head was a summer camp that I went to as a little girl. Wow. I still go back there. In fact, the women who I met and have remained friends with, our daughters go to this camp now. And it sounds very bougie, but we're going to rent camp out in May, and I'll have a reunion there and be there together as adults. So it's just a very special place in the Cumberland Plateau on this beautiful lake in the middle of Tennessee. And it brings me some peace. Yeah.
Yeah. It's these moments, we're living in a world right now, ladies and gentlemen, where, 24/7 we're going to bed with our cell phones. We're, processing more information in one day than our great grandparents processed in a month. And it's incredibly important to sit at a lake once in a while. God bless you. Thank you, Jocelyn, for being on Awakened Nation. Once again, where do they go? Your website, they reach out to you. Where?
www.ucmj-defender.com. Or look me up on TikTok as MessyMilitaryLawyer.
I'm going to friend you today on Messy Military Lawyer. But
I look forward.
Definitely. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to have another special guest next week, and we're going to be closing out season 4. And I believe I'm going to have a really exciting mystery guest for our last episode of season 4. But thank you, everybody. Take care and have a great week. Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.